Welcome to the next edition of AMC's podcast series, and today we have Sydney's mini king in the studio with us, Brian Foley, a man from the 60s, 70s and 80s, a man with a reputation for killing other big cars with tiny little ones. Good morning, Brian. It's great to have you here.
Morning, Ray.
Let's just get straight into it without any hesitations. Your career started in the late 1950s from what I've looked up. What drew you to the sport in the first place? Did you start in car clubs like most of us did, or did you go straight into circuit racing?
Oh, well, I started going out to Mount Druitt just to watch the odd race and the bug bit, I suppose. And I worked in Erskineville Road. My father had an electrical contracting business. And a couple of 100 metres up the road was a fellow called Frank Dent. And Frank Dent was a motor racing driver and mechanic, and he had a very famous Austin A40, supposedly the fastest A30 in Australia. Anyway, I said to my father one day, I said, Joe, Frank wants to sell his A30. He's building another special one. So Joe said, how much, son? I said, 1,250 quid.
Which was a lot of money in those days.
That's right.
That was a king's ransom.
So Joe very kindly bought me the Austin A30, and I took it to Mount Druitt in 1957 and raced the car there. And I think it must have been the long weekend in October. We took the A30 to Bathurst, and I went out in practice. And when I came in, Frank was quite excited. He said, Brian, that's the first time this car has ever broken 4 minutes around here.
4 minutes, crikey.
4 minutes. I did a 3:59.7. So
I mean,
I'd arrived.
Oh, gosh. I mean, in contemporary terms, that's astonishing, isn't it? It just really is.
So I went from A30s to Austin Lancers to A40Farinas, and then I got a Bug-Eye Sprite. And
I remember those. Let's go back a little bit. The first recorded major race success that you have was in the first Australian Touring Car Championship at Gnoo Blas, Orange, in 1960.
Yeah.
You drove there in an Austin A40Farina for Kingsley Motors. Now, was that a paid drive, or did you? Were you a kind of a contracted driver?
I think I was getting parts free and that sort of thing.
So you owned the car?
I owned the car, yeah. And so they were assisting with the help of BMC, and that's pretty well as I remember it, yeah.
Yeah, the assistance was mostly in bits for no cost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So that's kind of, it's an interesting, because at that stage of the game there was a lot of, let's call it, factory assistance, but almost under the counter, as it were. Nobody talked about it. If you got it, you were lucky, and if you didn't, you didn't. So that 1960 race, that was also the first time we heard the name Kevin Bartlett. Now, obviously, you were in the same race on the same day.
Yeah. I met Kevin at Bathurst. I can remember I was talking to him recently, and we were trying to work out when we'd met at the drivers' get-together on the Gold Coast in September. And we worked out it was 1958. And I was in the Austin Lancer, and he had his mum's
Morris Minor convertible.
A Morris Minor convertible, yeah. So that's.
So yes, this is called. We've known each other for a while.
Yeah.
So when you entered that race, that first 1960 Australian Touring Car Championship, that's like, sort of, if you would, entering a Grand Prix for the first time, right? What drew you to that? Was it just the fact that it was on and you thought you'd give it a go?
Yeah, pretty well. And I think there might have been 50 starters. It was a lot of cars, I remember. I was absolutely hooked on going racing, mainly locally, Not that there were many tracks locally back in the day.
No, quite true.
Yeah.
Certainly in the 50s.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, we've done some research on your history, and it's interesting that in 1960 you also drove a Sprite, very early, it would have been a bug-eye Sprite, in the Australian GT Championships. You
61.
finished 61, was that? Oh, 61, okay. That's
Pretty sure it was 61.
Yeah, so you finished 12th outright and first in class. Now, that's not bad for a kid who's just really only a couple of years away from starting racing.
Well, the GT Championship was at Warwick Farm, and I came third outright.
Third? Crikey.
Because Bob Jane kept on, pardon me, running off the track in his Maserati 300S. If you remember, with that championship, it was open to cars with a hardtop. And so everybody was putting hardtops on their sports cars. So you had a 300S hardtop and
a D-type hardtop.
And a Lotus 11 hardtop and a D-type hardtop and all that sort of thing.
And they were the ugliest things in the world.
I borrowed some tyres. Well, not borrowed. I bought some racing tyres from Tommy Corcoran, who had a little Lola. And I bought these second-hand Dunlop race tyres, and it just transformed the bug-eye Sprite, you know. And, it came third outright because other cars were breaking down and running off the track. And that sort of started me, you know, that gave me a real kick along.
I'll bet it did. So we're going to go back a year, back to 1960 again, because in 1960 you were entered in one of the works, Austin Lancers, alongside Barry Gurdon, in the first Armstrong 500 at Phillip Island.
Yeah.
Now, what do you remember about that? Because obviously that was the first of what we now know as the great race. But back then it was an experiment, for want of a better word.
Yeah, well, there was 3 Austin Lancers, 3 Morris Majors.
Which was essentially the same motor car with a slightly
identical
different body.
car. And for the first and only time, all the drivers were requested that they had to go to the gym and get fit. So I had to go to the Grace Brothers gym in Broadway and run up and down stairs at home. And that was my first. And I went to the gym twice for the first and last time.
Yes, okay. So you were, how old would you have been in 1960? We won't bother with the mathematics. You were still a
26.
young man. 26, okay. So, I mean, again, you'd started racing only, 2 or 3 years earlier. So, yeah. I mean, your rise to, let's call it works driver status was pretty quick. And I think that's quite an accomplishment, particularly when you go to the next year, because in 61, again at the Armstrong 500 at Phillip Island, you co-drove a Studebaker Lark with none other than David Mackay, or Mackay, depending entirely on your pronunciation. Now, obviously he came and tapped you on the shoulder and said, come here, son, drive with me.
Yeah, he did. And I remember quite clearly that normally when you went to a race meeting, you went and practiced the day before or tested the day before the race. But in this instance, David had organised the Studebaker Lark from York Motors, and he said, look, what I'll get you to do is go down to Phillip Island 2 weeks before and we'll do some tyre testing.
Oh, okay.
So I drove the car down and he flew down. And
that sounds about right.
And we went down to Phillip Island, and we fitted Pirelli Cinceratos to the car. And David said, look, go out and do 5 laps and we'll check the tyres and see how they are. So I went out and did 5 laps, which is, I don't know, not far.
About 12K. Yeah.
And the right-hand front tyre, all the wire was hanging out the side of the tyre. So we worked out we had to do about 50 pit stops. So anyway, we pumped the tyres up to 50 pounds, which cured the problem. So it was a good deal going down and doing that early testing. And then when the race day came, there were 2 Victorian Highway Patrol guys running a Studebaker Lark, which was the car of choice for the Highway Patrol.
Sutherland and Mottram?
Yeah, that's who it was, Sutherland and Mottram, yeah.
Yes.
So I'm racing around during the race, and I could see the Studebaker Lark ahead of me. So I'm getting closer and closer and closer. I can't tell you the smile I had on my face, because I would have been one of the very few drivers that overtook a couple of Highway Patrol guys.
Exactly. And did it legally, and at high speed. Oh, dear. Because that day, I mean, you finished with a class win, and you came second outright behind Bob Jane and Harry Firth. And that's an accomplishment.
Yeah, out of this day, David reckoned that we weren't all that behind at all.
Ah, he figured that you got a little bit diddled.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, doesn't matter.
Your career, it's fascinating to look back on it, because, again, running through this in a more or less chronological fashion, you go to 62. Again, you teamed up with David in, of all things, a Citroen ID19 for the race at Bathurst. Sorry, for the race at Phillip Island, the third and last race at Phillip Island. Now, I mean, Citroens are wonderful motor cars, but they're not race cars, are they, really?
Definitely not.
Do you remember that?
Well, I remember that we went to, Billy Buckler and I went to, drove the car. It was an ID19, and it was the year that the track started to break up. And it got that bad that you had to actually drive off the circuit down at, is it Hungary, the one that's way down the back?
Siberia.
You had to drive off the track and back onto the track because the circuit itself had broken up. Yeah. But during the race, Billy Buckle was driving, and the car stopped out of Siberia. And I got some tools and went down. It was a fair way, actually.
Oh, it's a good walk.
And I got halfway there, and eventually Bill took off again. So we didn't really fare that much, or very well. And later that year, there was a 6-hour race at Bathurst, or it might have been only weeks later. So we took the Citroen there. And the beauty of the Citroen was you could drive it flat out all days. Well, we had 64 horsepower, don't forget.
Oh, yeah, a whole 64 horsepower. Exactly.
And down Conrod, the car did 101 mile an hour. And with the braking, you waited till you saw the flag marshal start to run before you put the brakes on. And the thing would just stop on a dime. It was incredible. Yeah.
They're wonderful motor cars. I mean, I've owned a couple of them over the years, and I know exactly what you mean. In that same time frame, again, talking the early 60s, 61 through 63, you also drove in the Sports Car Championship, and you were very successful. And again, back in BMC product, back in Sprites, right? Again, I am assuming that was, again, not so much a paid drive, but you didn't pay for the drive.
No.
You were put in the car and told, go out and win some races.
Yeah.
Got to be a lot of fun for a young fella.
Yeah,
exactly. Going back through that same time frame, and you mentioned it earlier, probably the most memorable of all those cars was the white Mark II Sprite, the 2A that you drove for P&R Williams, because that was a giant killer of a little motor car. I mean, I can remember you at Warwick Farm just giving much, much bigger motor cars with much, much more power a whole lot of hassle.
Well, it handled so well, and Warwick Farm was such a small car circuit that it was well suited against the bigger cars. Yeah.
So, I mean, you must have won an awful lot of races in that time frame with that little car.
Well, a lot of class wins. Yeah.
Did you tour it? Did you go interstate with the car?
I don't think so, no.
Because in those days,
it wasn't until the Cooper S's that I started to travel.
Okay. So really in those days, at the early 60s, we only really had Warwick Farm and Catalina Park.
I did go to, when I was at Bathurst in 59, I met a young, I had the Austin Lancer, and there was a young Tasmanian guy came up with an Austin Lancer called Gavin Ewell.
Ah, okay.
And his Austin Lancer had a twin cam MGA motor in it.
Stock standard, of course.
So we became quite friendly. And he said, what about coming down to Tasmania and racing the car, and you can stay at my place.
Which is not a bad place to stay.
So I didn't know what his place was like, so I took down so when I went down there eventually, I went down with the A40Farina, and he changed to an A40Farina. So going to Tasmania back then was like going overseas.
Exactly.
So my wife and I went down and in the A40Farina, and he met us at Devonport, and we followed him back, and we bypassed Launceston and down the Hobart Road and came to Symonds Plains, the gate. So we drove down this driveway for a mile, gravel driveway around this magnificent old convict-built home with the lawns going down to the Esk River. I couldn't believe it, and it was sort of latish in the day. And the next morning, we went down for breakfast. This is 1960, February. It was a Tasman series. I came down for breakfast, and sitting at the breakfast table was Jack Brabham.
Okay, right.
It's like going down and seeing Max sitting at the breakfast table, you know.
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
Today,
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. My jaw was anyway. Yeah, so I had some wonderful times in Tassie with different cars and with the Ewells.
Oh, your wonderful family, family. So that sort of brings us to, and you mentioned it just a moment ago, the switch over from sports cars to Cooper S's. Now, the Mini Cooper came out quite early in the day, but did you ever race anything that wasn't a Cooper S? I mean, like an 850? I think you started with Cooper S's.
The first Cooper S I raced was the 1100. It was fully imported, right. Cooper S, P&O Williams, as I remember. And then in 1964 was that 6-hour race in Melbourne, and they brought out 3 imported 1300 Cooper S's.
Okay.
Ex-factory cars, which were 3 ex-cabs, I tell you. They had a lot of work done to them. So Peter Malloy was at P&O Williams in those days, and he rebuilt the 3 cars for the race at Sandown. Yeah.
Yeah, that was the race that Kevin Bartlett won in the Alfa?
No, Ralph Sash and Bussanello, I think. They won by a street.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. But that was kind of the first long distance race in Melbourne, apart from the Phillip Island races.
Yeah, exactly.
And would have been the first long distance race at Sandown, certainly.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Peter Manton and I drove together in that race.
Oh, was that the first and only time?
It was the first time we'd driven together, yes. Mm. And here again, cars were dropping out, so we came second. You just got to keep going.
Actually, as Jack Brabham once said, if you want to finish first you got to finish.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. So, I mean, again, trying to get this into time and space, the switch over when the Cooper S arrived, and it became obviously it was an instant success as a racing car. In every country it went to, and certainly in Australia, because, I mean, it had a power to weight ratio that was certainly equivalent to all of the Humpy Holtons and so on. But of course, by 64, a little bit later on, General Motors brought out the S4, and Beachy had one, and Yogi Miura had one. Recently, I saw a photograph of you going into, I think it was Forest Elbow at Bathurst, leading Yogi in his S4, Brian Muir, when it was painted green, and you were in a bright red Cooper S, and he was in a dark green S4 Holton. So, I mean, when you think about the disparity in engine sizes, and yet the cars were very equal on the racetrack.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that? You must have enjoyed that enormously.
Yes, well, it was exaggerated at Warwick Farm, where you could be ahead of some Mustangs and, the V8s of the time.
Yes. I actually, I'm going to sort of interpose here with a memory from a little further on, right? But there was one day at Warwick Farm in a 10-lap sprint race that you and Ian Gagan, let's say you were swapping first place about 3 or 4 times a lap, right? And you were by far the 2 fastest cars in the race by a country mile. And myself and a few other people were standing on the tote building inside the pits, and Leo was standing next to us, and Leo was giving us a running commentary on when you should be passing Pete and when Pete should be passing you. And of course,
he was probably right.
At the end of the 10 laps, it was. I don't think we'd ever seen so many passing moves at Warwick Farm in one race ever. Okay, but I mean, when you think about that, we're just going to go back to a little bit of real history. In 1964, the Touring Car Championship was still one race, and it went to Lakeside that year. Now, you finished a spectacular 4th outright in that event against Ian Gagan, Bob Jane, all of the heavyweights, right? Okay, that was the year that a lot of cars ended up in a car park at Hungry Corner because I bet 4 or 5 cars went off at Hungry Corner and they were just left there, parked one up against the other.
That's right. That was the left-hander up the hill.
That's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
That's right. Exactly. But I mean, when you think about it, 4th outright is a sensational finish against such a field.
Well, here again, this was one of the first meetings that I went to where I went up a few days, did some testing at Lakeside a few days before rather than just
turn up on Saturday.
Yes, exactly. So we were able to do a little bit of tuning, and the person that we were sort of racing against, importantly, was Peter Manton, and we were able to beat Peter on the day. So that was sort of the level at which you raced. If you could beat Peter, you did well.
Of course, I mean, Peter, Jim McEwen and Norm Beachy really formed the first, I suppose, professional touring car team, the Neptune team.
Yes.
With sponsorship from Neptune, which was part of the Shell Group, right? And they were certainly the first cars that were painted up as a team at the top, at the elite level, right? So, I mean, your car was almost the colours of your car was almost always red. Was that a choice that you made, or was it just accidental?
May have been accidental. Yes, I'm not too sure on that one. You've got to remember, Ray, this is 60 years ago.
Oh, yes, come on, Brian. It's only just for men like us. It's just only a few days ago. It's not a problem. So, okay, right now. We're going to jump a year, and we're going to talk about 1965, again the Touring Car Championship race. It was at Sandown. Now, that was the day that Norm Beachy turned up for the first time in a Mustang.
Ah, right.
The first Mustang that we saw racing here. Now, I suppose when you say, you had all of the major cars, it's amazing that you did so well at a circuit like Sandown, which is not a mini-friendly circuit, 2 great big long straights. I mean, do you remember anything about that day? Because it was a spectacular day for everybody who watched it.
The thing I do remember about Sandown was at one meeting I went to, it was a Tasman Series race.
Right.
And they had what they called the Flockhart Memorial Trophy.
Yes.
Ron Flockhart not only was a Formula One driver, but he did race Cooper S's for the factory.
Mm-hmm.
And he was killed, as you know, in Victoria. And they had this Ron Flockhart Memorial Trophy for minis.
Yeah.
So this race started, and after a few laps, Skinny Manton and I, were way ahead of the rest of the field. And what we both realised was that whoever went first over the top of the hill up the back straight, the other person would slipstream and pass him before the finishing line.
Okay.
Right? So we're going up the hill up the back straight.
What, on the last lap, I guess?
On the last lap, and I slowed down. So he was first over the hill. So he said, no way. So he slowed down. And then I slowed down. And by the time we got to the top of the hill, we nearly stopped.
I can imagine.
I'll
the
never forget
commentators
it.
must have been going crazy.
So anyway, he eventually went first. So we went down through the S's and around, and there was a big left-hander into the main straight there back in those days, not that little twisty bit. And I'm right behind Skinny, and he got halfway through the corner and got it all sideways, and I had to back off, otherwise I would have hit him. And because I backed off, he beat me over the finishing line. And I reckon it was probably about the width of that coffee cup.
But I mean, the sight of you, the pair of you, progressively getting slower and slower and slower along the back straight must have been hilarious, because you must have been a long way in front of whoever was running first.
Oh, it was no one. It was close. Oh God, we laughed afterwards.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Okay, well, look, we're going to move on again. Probably the next really significant event in your career that as a milestone would have been the Bathurst race in 1966, which of course was the year of the Cooper S.
65 was the good year for me.
For you, but 66 was the year that was the
Cooper
big,
S year.
That's right, exactly.
They're all Cooper S's, and Cooper S's were first to 10th or something. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, and again, you were a works driver in that stage of the game. You know, you were teamed with Paddy Hopkirk. I mean, one of the best rally drivers in the world.
Yeah.
Now, what was that like? I mean, you obviously held your own. You were as fast as anybody else on that day.
Yeah, well, in 65, I got the fastest lap of the race.
That's right, exactly.
Which was the year that we did very well. That was Peter and I. In 66...
because in 65 you were up against the Cortina GT 500s.
Yeah.
Right? And that was one of the first, let's call it, purpose-built race cars.
Well, they had the huge fuel tank in.
That's right, exactly. You know.
And that was the winning
combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. But sorry, go back to 65 and your race.
Well, our car was as quick as the GT Cortinas. In fact, we led the race for a while, but then we didn't have the fuel capacity. So we had to make more pit stops, and so the Cortinas were first and second, and our Cooper S came in third outright.
You think about that in today's terms, with the speed that the cars go these days. I mean, and again, you drove, those cars, you could have driven them to the circuit. Okay, they didn't. They came on a trailer, but I mean, the point was that they were road motor cars.
Yeah, well, you could have gone down to the shops.
Exactly. Yeah. I can remember that in 66, Frank Matic entered a Cooper S, which was his wife's shopping car.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things have just changed so much over the years. What do you remember about that 66 race, with Paddy?
Well, I don't remember a lot about it, to be honest. I remember Rano and I were sort of leading for a while, and then we had engine problems.
Ah, that was fairly rare.
Yeah, and dropped out. So sort of lost interest in the day, as it were.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving right along, we got cut past 66 at Bathurst. We moved to 67 at Lakeside for the Touring Car Championship. You finished in a Cooper S, second outright behind Pete Gagan's Mustang. You've got to tell me the story about that. I mean, was there an awful lot of casualties, or were you just that much faster than everybody else?
Well, in practice, I think Peter and I were 0.1 of a second apart, and we weren't that far off a lot of the cars.
The big,
there was Beachy and Pete were the quickest, and McEwen.
Yeah.
But
Kevin
I
was
think,
there in the Alfa.
in the Alfa, Beachy blew the tyre later in the race in the lead, and I think McEwen had tyre trouble, and the Cooper S's went really well that day. And, so second outright, I was elated.
I can imagine.
Elated. But 67 was a good year because they had the AJC trophy at Warwick Farm, which I won. And I had a race-long dice with Kevin in the GTA. Kevin got slightly sideways through Homestead, and I was able to pass him there and went on to win. So that was exciting. And then a dear friend of mine, who I've known for many years, a guy called Dickie Arblaster, who was the CEO of Federated Motors, who were the BMC distributors in Singapore and Malaysia. And Dickie rallied a Cooper S up there, and he came down to Lakeside. He brought his car to Lakeside in 66, I think it was, have a bit of a run and see the Tasman series. And we got talking, and Peter's car and my car were a hell of a lot quicker than his car. So he said to me, what about coming up to Singapore next year? He said, I'll pay all the expenses, and we'll just change the badge because they sold Austin's and not Morris's. We'll just change the badge on the grill, and away we go. So I've got photos at home of them loading the Cooper S into the plane. We flew the car up there. Flew the car to Singapore and Malaysia. There was a race at Malaysia the weekend before, and we cleaned up.
Oh, I can imagine you would have.
Yeah, we cleaned up. So 67 was a good year. But what we realised was that the rules and regulations there were slightly more open than down here.
Kind of like sports sedan rules.
Yeah, to a degree. So in 68, he said, after the event in 67, Dickie said to me, well, we better bring the car up next year. So I said, well, okay. And so we decided to build another car, a special car, a lightweight. And at home in my memorabilia, I've got a Weybridge ticket, which says 1000 weight.
Okay.
1000 weight, 500 kilos is a pretty light car. And we put a 1370 in it with all the bits and pieces and drilled a couple of holes in the bonnet and put a 48 IDA Weber on it. Instead of stuck in behind the Speedo, it was up through the bonnet. And this thing was a rocket ship.
I can imagine.
And so we took that up to Singapore, and it coincided with Mazda had just released the new Mazda 100 Coupe.
Oh,
rotary,
the R100, yes.
The R100. And they sent a couple of works cars to Singapore with a couple of kamikaze pilots to show off their wares, this rotary. They just got the year wrong.
You sent them home with the tail between their legs, I guess.
Yeah, this Cooper S, it was 7 seconds a lap quicker than the car which I'd taken up the year before, which was our Warwick Farm car.
Just a mere 7 seconds.
Yeah, mind you, it was a 3-mile circuit.
Oh, okay.
But this thing was really
quick.
Yeah, really quick.
Fun to drive.
And what happened was we sold it up there. This fellow, local guy, thought, yes, I'll have that. So the car never raced in Australia. We built it, took it to Singapore.
It was a one race.
Didn't bring it home.
A one race special. I mean,
yeah.
That's the one. That's a typical car dealer's exercise, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Race it and sell it on the same day.
Yeah, but God, it was good. It was a good car.
Okay. All right. The next probably most interesting race would have been 67 at Bathurst, because that was the first year that Ford trotted out the Falcon GT.
Yeah.
And of course, that made everything else basically uncompetitive.
Correct.
And how did you fare in that day? I mean, you must have been sort of frustrated because those guys were just walking away from everybody.
Well, personally, after a while, we had gearbox trouble, as I remember, and we only had a couple of gears. So although the Cooper S's won their class, they were still way off the pace of the Falcon.
Yeah.
Of the Falcons, which were just stroking them along, not really. They didn't have to drive them really hard because the Cooper S's were still restricted by these piddly little fuel tanks that they had. That was the problem.
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because you don't think of that in sort of contemporary terms, because they had those two little tiny fuel tanks in the back, which of course was designed around the original car. Yeah. Nobody thought to put bigger tanks in them, right? Or just weren't allowed to change them. But what was it like? You must have got passed a few times by the faster cars that year.
I remember in later years at Bathurst, those V8s were really quick.
Yeah,
they really went a long way. After the first of the Falcons, they just got quicker and quicker and quicker. So, yes, you were getting past regularly.
So, 68, we talked about that a moment ago.
That was the first year I raced the Alfa at Bathurst.
That's what I was thinking, because I was just consulting my memory, as poor as it is. And so 67 was really the end of your career in Cooper S's. And then in 68, you moved on to the Alfa. What was the decision to go Alfa instead of, say, for argument's sake, a Falcon or a Monaro?
I'd taken on the Alfa franchise.
That's called a commercial decision.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I thought, well, if I'm trying to sell Alfas, perhaps I should race an Alfa. And although I wasn't racing an Alfa on just regularly, I thought, well, we'll give it a run at Bathurst. So 68 was the first year I drove an Alfa, and also it was the first year, I'm pretty sure, where you could use racing tyres and not just normal road tyres. And so we fitted a set of, I think they might have been Firestone tyres, or Goodyears perhaps, I forget. And so I was driving around in practice and thought, what was that? Big wobble. So I came back to the pits and I pulled the centre out of the wheel.
Yes, not clever.
Yeah. And this happened again on practice day. And, we checked the hubs and cleaned them and all that sort of thing. And then in the race, the right-hander after the dipper.
Yes.
That little right-hand kink after the dipper. There was no fence or anything there. I nearly went off the track there because I'd broken the wheel. Yeah. And so pit stop there. And then later in the race, I'd just gone through turn 1 to go up Forest.
Up towards Griffin's Bend.
Yeah, up the hill. And I went, oh, it feels like a flat tyre. And I've just gone past the pits. So it really felt like a front tyre, and I was going through McPhillamy Park and the back wheel passed me.
Right.
And in those days, there was no wall on the inside. It was just down there.
Yeah.
And you carried a spare and a jack. So I'm on the inside of McPhillamy.
Oh.
Changing the spare wheel.
Well, at least you went on the outside of McPhillamy. Right.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly.
So, anyway, so we still managed to finish the race, but we learned a lot about it.
I'm trying to remember which year was it that when Alec Mildren ran a team of Alfas and the cars had come out from Italy fully prepared for the race and nobody had taken the paint off the wheels where the nut screwed onto the wheel, and the nuts keep getting loose. And it took them the whole weekend, and they didn't actually figure it out until after the race was over.
I don't remember.
I'm not sure which year it was, but it was 1967, according to my helpful editor who's sitting across the table. Thank you, helpful editor. Right. Okay, so 69 you were missing from the Touring Car Championship. I guess that was the Alfa dealership was growing. Your dealership was in Leichhardt on Parramatta Road from memory?
69, no, I was still in Caringbah, and then I moved to Parramatta.
Okay.
in Church Street, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, okay. Because, I mean, you were a Shire man from way back, weren't you, really?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, your business in Caringbah was there for decades.
Well, I lived in Blakehurst, so it wasn't too far, Tom English.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're going to go to the infamous 1969 Hardy Ferodo. You and David Mackay, Falcon GT. You didn't finish. That was the year, of course, of the 69, the Billy Brown crash at Skyline on the first lap. Took out quite a few cars from the front runners.
Was that 69?
Oh, it definitely was 69.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That was the year that Colin and Tony Roberts won the race.
All right.
In the 350 Monaros. I think from memory, your car might have been sponsored by Finney Ford, I think.
No, Alto.
Alto. Okay, right.
Alto Ford.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another one of David's deals.
Yeah.
Exactly. What was that like? I mean, that was your
Terrible.
first race in a Ford?
It was the worst car I've ever driven in my life.
That's a Falcon GT, not a Phase 1 or a Phase 2 or a Phase 3, just a straight-up GT.
It was a Falcon GT, whatever they were in those days, and it was just a stock standard Falcon GT, where a lot of those Falcon GTs were cars that were being raced, and had a lot of work done to them, although they were standard,
yes,
as it were.
Standard in inverted commas.
Inverted commas. But this car was terrible. You wallowed around the top of the mountain, and then they wanted you to put your foot on the brake to pump up the brake pedal down Conrod, and you just put your head on the line or your neck on the line round the top of the mountain, and you had to slow down. The
brakes were that bad.
Ran out of brakes.
Okay.
It was terrible.
Oh gosh, yeah. When you think back into those days, the regulations about what manufacturers were allowed to do with the cars that ran in races, the cars were road cars. They certainly didn't perform very well as race cars under certain circumstances. They had lots of problems.
Yeah.
And as you say, a lot of the guys who were running like the Works team and Johnny Goss and people of that nature, they were running those cars all the time.
Yeah.
Right, in 10, 20 lap sprint races and that sort of thing. So they probably had their cars much better prepared than anybody else.
Yeah. Well, this was just a one-off.
Yeah. Just
drive,
Exactly. Okay, we're going to move on because that was really, the change in decade meant a big change for you because you got out of touring cars or traditional touring cars. You did a sponsorship deal with one of the cigarette companies. I think it was Rothmans, and you had the Chesterfield brand, and you bought a 2.3 litre Porsche 911. Now, I mean, that's a really big jump. Was that because the Porsche was the gun car at the time?
Well, it was the first year that you were allowed to advertise on your car.
Yes.
Properly. And therefore you were able to get sponsorship. And I was lucky enough to get sponsorship with Rothmans. I think that the Porsche had a bit going for it, in as much as I thought it'd be, say, more competitive with the V8s. It was going to be very reliable. We had all the work done. Bob Aitken fitted all the Porsche competition bits to the engine, and we did a lot of work on the car to lighten it. I think it weighed 850 kilos, something like that.
So it was a pretty light car.
Yeah. It was pretty light, and it had about 220 horsepower, 225 horsepower, something like that. What we didn't realise was that because you weren't allowed to do a lot of modifications to the suspension, like changing pickup points, whatever, that the car was very tail heavy and it could bite you. So you had to be very, very careful.
I can remember driving them myself, that era of Porsche, and we used to refer to it as having a bad case of red headlights because you could find yourself going backwards very quickly.
Well, this car didn't have any didn't have any wings on the back, nothing, no little wings or nothing. And I remember at Bathurst, the car was timed at 140 mile an hour down Conrod, which is pretty quick for that sort of car.
Indeed.
And when you went over the little humps down Conrod, and it was straight all the way there, back in the day, you could feel the back wheels tweak as they came. You can imagine the back wheels like this, tweak as it went over the rise. And in the race, over the last rise, I went over and I felt it start to go sideways. I didn't touch anything.
Just wait for it to settle.
I just, don't go near the accelerator, the brakes, nothing. Just hang on. And it took me all the way down to the corner to get the thing out of control. I can't tell you in this podcast. It scared the daylights out of me.
I can
tell you.
Yeah. Because at that stage of the game, Billy Brown had one, Jimmy McEwen had one. There were, of course, Alan Hamilton had almost won the touring car championship in one.
The year before, I
that's
think.
Right,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, they were a wonderful motor car at the time.
Well, see, around Bathurst, the car did 2 minutes 33, which is pretty quick.
Yeah,
for that, for the spec it had on a power circuit.
Yeah, yeah.
So although it didn't handle, and it bites you.
Well, it would put it this way: the handling was challenging.
Yes, challenging. Oh God.
Oh dear me. Okay, so moving right along and having such a good time doing this, I might add. You missed the Bathurst 500 for the first time in 1970. But you were back in 71, and of course, by this stage of the game, the world had moved on. Holden had brought out the Tirana GTR XU1. Ford was still campaigning the original style Falcon GTs. You went to Bathurst in 71 with Donnie Holland and XU1. I mean, what was that like again? Because almost every year you'd been to Bathurst in a different motor car, right?
Oh, well, the XU1 was okay, because Don had prepared it well. He knew the car and, it did what it was supposed to do. And it was quite a good experience, to drive something different. It was quite different to what I had driven before.
Certainly better than the Falcon the year before.
Yeah.
You're just shaking your head.
Yeah.
I can see that. That's right, exactly. So,
yeah, dear. I don't think I raced against Don that often in minis because he was more. He was in the lightweight.
yeah, he was in the sports
I was
sedans.
normally improved production.
Yeah,
he was in the lightweight. He and Johnny Leffler drove the lightweight.
Yeah, the sports
models.
sedan sort of thing. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Now, in 1971, you were an Alfa dealer at that stage of the game, so you bought a GTA, I assume a GTA M from the factory.
Yeah.
To run in the Touring Car Championship. It didn't go all that well. It was supposed to be a brand new car, but apparently when it arrived, it wasn't quite a brand new motor car.
It was worn out.
It was basically over and out before you got it.
It was worn out. I don't know what its history was, but as it turned out, it had all the really good GTA parts on it. The lightweight doors and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the engine was worn out, the gearbox was worn out, and the diff was worn out. So,
well, apart from the brake rotors, what else is there? Right?
So we totally rebuilt it mechanically, and at Warwick Farm, it was quicker than all the Porsches, so it wasn't too bad.
No.
No,
Yeah.
no, it was quicker than McEwen and Brown around there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, you're not the first person to say that they bought a works car from Europe and it turned up to be not quite what you paid for.
No, it wasn't. But Alfa Romeo Australia looked after me, and it turned out okay in the end.
That would have been in the Enrico Zanarini years.
Enrico, Tagini, yeah.
And the spaghetti lunches.
Oh, mate.
Dear me. So with that same car, you eventually decided to convert it into a sports sedan because sports sedan racing in the early 70s was on the rise. I mean, it was the gun category.
Well, what had happened was,
money.
they'd gone to production touring car.
Yes.
And so the old improved production cars and now become sports sedans or whatever they call it, GTs. So you could use an engine, any engine produced by the same company. So I spoke to Alec Mildren and I got one of his 2.5 litre V8s and we fitted it. It was a pretty tight squeeze. And because it had a wet sump, it was still a bit high, so we had the trumpets coming up. But it was restricted by the exhaust pipes wouldn't fit. So we lost a lot of power by having to strangle the engine with the exhaust pipes. But the and I've told the story before, but the GTA M2 litre, we got under 140 round Warwick Farm, 139.8 or something, and then we did all this work with the V8, and we got into the 38s.
So you got a second out of it.
We got a second out of it. So
That's
you
a very
suddenly realise what it takes to find a second.
Exactly. A bucket load of money for a
Oh,
start.
God. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
So we took that car to a few circuits. It went well.
A good, easy car to drive? I mean, obviously it must have had a lot of torque.
Porsche, when you drove the Porsche, you drove 9 tenths, 9.1 tenths, 9.2 tenths, 9 point, whoops.
Yes.
But when you drove the Alfa, you could drive at 110 or 11 tenths. Yeah. And then the slower you got, the quicker you went, as you tidied it up. That was the sort of car it was.
It's funny because, I can remember Porsches didn't send you any signals like Volkswagens when you raced Volkswagens. They would hold on and hold on and hold on all the way up until you went backwards.
Yeah.
Right? And there was almost no gap between got it and ain't got it. We've got to, the early 70s, 71, 72, and pretty much that was, you were getting towards the end of your career. I think your last race at Bathurst was 74 with Peter Werrett, again in an Alfa, an Alfetta.
In 73, I built another Alfa.
All right. For Bathurst?
No.
No? Oh, which one? The
You
sports
don't remember that one?
I'm struggling.
I bought the ex-Bartlett GTA from John French.
Okay.
The lightweight.
Yeah.
And we sent it over to Bowen at Brookvale and took the front suspension out of it and put a Formula 5000 front suspension in it.
Right. Sports sedan. Yes.
Sports sedan. And we fitted proper magnesium wheels to it.
Okay.
And we moved the engine back slightly and dry sumped it.
Right.
And put the oil tank in the boot. And
so just minor modification.
Minor modifications. Fitted a 24-valve head to it off a Formula 2 engine and it just plonked straight on top of the... Yeah, we didn't match anything up. We just plonked it on because all the bolts...
Fitted.
And we took it to Schroeder's and the motor gave 223 horsepower.
Okay.
And the car weighed 635 kilos. And we went a second quicker at Warwick Farm.
Again, with another bucket load of money, right?
But it was a quick car. It was we took it to Calder once at the last moment because Pete couldn't run. And around Calder, it was a second slower than the lap record.
Is that right?
For GT cars. So it was pretty quick.
Pretty quick little car.
Yeah, it was quick.
It must have been a really delightful motor car to drive.
And the problem with it was, though, that we only raced it at Warwick Farm the once in the middle of 73 and Warwick Farm closed.
Yeah.
So, the car had a lot of improvement to go.
Yeah. Well, you'd only just basically built the thing when it was almost over.
No.
Yeah.
No, but it was good. It was quick. And then there was the Torque Alfetta in 74, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And
with Peter and the TV.
he had the TV show going, and so that was a good exercise. It worked well. Peter, in his talks, was keeping people up to date of how all the preparation was going and And
Nothing like having your own ABC television show. It's called instant promotion. Exactly. So you spent a little bit of time towards the end of your career. You became more of an entrant than a driver by the mid-'70s. Right, with people like Johnny Leffler. You had, in 75, you had a car at Bathurst.
I just remembered something else that happened in 73.
Right. Happy to go backwards.
Well, we took the lightweight to Singapore.
Oh, okay.
I got to know Mr. Fu. And he was the distributor for Alfa Romeo for Southeast Asia.
Right.
And his story was he made more out of Alfa Romeo than anyone else in the world because he used to assemble Alfa Romeos in Southeast Asia. And when the Alfa 33s came,
right,
all the police cars in Southeast Asia were all old Julias.
Yeah.
You go to KL and he had 3 or 4 showrooms. So Alfa said, well, now we're bringing out the new 33. We want you to set up a new assembly line because they were all assembled over there. And he said no. And they said, well, if you don't do it, we're going to take the franchise from you. So he said, okay. So he closed down everything, sold all his showrooms, sold all his parts. And with all the money he got back, he invested in Hong Kong. Property in Hong Kong. And made a squillion. So we took the lightweight up there, and Moffat was running in a Works Escort BDA.
Okay, right.
And it had rained in practice, and I didn't have any wet weather tyres because the car arrived late. So on race day, I was on the back of the grid, and Moffat, of course, was on pole. And
had it dried out overnight?
Yeah, but then it rained again.
Oh, okay, right.
It rained on race day. So I had the proper good wet weather tyres on, and the race starts. So off we go. Moff's out in front, and the field made it a bit easy for me, and I was able to get up to second. And then halfway through the race, down the end of the main straight where all the Ford executives were, where there's a big hairpin, Moff got on. There was a big puddle of water, and he aquaplaned on the water and slid off and got a flat tyre. So Brian went, thank you very much.
Exactly. Pardon me while they just coast past you.
So after the race, which was, it was really bad conditions, after the race, he was complaining bitterly to me that he'd spent all the prize money. He'd gone shopping. He'd gone shopping.
He'd expected to win, right?
Dear, oh dear.
Oh, gosh. No, there's some funny stories. I mean, going back to, the latter years, 75, at Bathurst, you had Murray Claude Beaumont with you in 77 with Derek Bell and Gary Leggett. What was it like to be actually sitting in the pits and not driving the cars?
Well, it was funny because John Fitzpatrick became a good mate of mine after I met him in 64 at Sandown when he came out with Paddy to drive. And I said to John in 75, what about coming out and driving one of the Alfa cars, which he did, and we had a problem with it. And then he drove with Bobby Morris in 76 and won Bathurst.
Yes.
And then in 77...
Limped home in Bathurst. Yes, exactly.
I said to him in 77, I said, look, I'm looking for somebody to drive the car. And he said, look, I'll have a word with Derek Bell. I said, Derek Bell, he's world famous. And John said, just leave it with me. Anyway, he spoke to Derek, and Derek said, oh, that sounds like a pretty good idea. So Derek came out and drove the car. And I had a meeting with this guy who owned a company called Mingard, and he supplied some money, and we painted the car dark blue. And Derek came out and drove the old car, it had been to Bathurst several times. It was like an old nail, this thing, but it was in really good nick. And I was so excited watching that car compete at Bathurst and winning the class, it was really good. Because, it was probably as exciting as driving the car.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because I think with such a long career and such a successful career, to switch over, it kind of reminds me of some people like Alec Mildren, for instance, who went from race driver to patron.
Yeah.
And just really enjoyed that transition. You obviously did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so I sort of hung around for a few more years. Derek drove the car again for me in 1980, I think, or 79. Yeah. Came second in class. Yeah, it was really good.
So, looking back on your career, which race do you remember the most? Was it the Lakeside race where you came second, or was it a 10-lap screamer that you had just so much fun in?
I suppose the AJC Trophy would ring a bell with me. That was a really exciting race against Kevin.
Yeah.
Bathurst in 65.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Singapore, of course.
Yeah, Singapore. Yeah. I raced at Macau one year, 69 it was. A very good friend of mine, P.H. Wong, had organised for me to drive for the Dodwells, who were the distributors in Hong Kong at Macau. And Dodwells went to the trouble of importing two brand new Alexander. There was a tuning company in England called Alexander.
Yeah, yes.
Who specialised with Cooperesses. And they sent out two brand new cars, and this other fellow and I had to run them in practice. And
so they were really new.
No, they were brand new with all the mods.
Yeah.
And the local hero there was Albert Poon. His nickname was Ha. So in the race...
yes, I just caught the joke. It's all right, don't worry, I'm a bit slow.
I was leading the race and Albert was behind me in his GTA. We're going round and round and round, and there's a hairpin over the back of Macau, and I locked the front wheel up and touched the wall, put the guard onto the tyre, and I had to pull into the pits for them just to yank it out. And on the very next lap, the battery lead to Poon's Alfa came off and he stopped. If it had happened the lap before, I would have just coasted through the hairpin.
Oh, dear.
So, but that was an experience back in the day, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What, in all of your racing experiences, what did you not do that you thinking back now, I should have done such and such?
Well, I suppose I should have done more of it, but,
well, you were a businessman. You were running a business at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean,
a lot of the other guys were more, I don't know, their businesses must have allowed them to spend a lot more time, or they had other people running the business for them.
Yes.
But mine, I suppose, was a bit of a one-man band to a degree.
Mm.
So I didn't get to race in as many events. That's probably something I miss. Yeah.
Yeah. Which car was your favourite? Because everybody's got a favourite, either a road car or a race car. Do you have one? Or were there so many of them?
Well, there are lots of cars. I suppose the car that was the most successful was the Cooper S I ran in 67.
Uh-huh.
Because I had some good wins in that.
That was the red car with the white roof.
Yeah, it might have been. But that was, the AJC Trophy and the Touring Car Championship in Singapore. So that was a good car, or a good year.
Yeah.
I liked the Citroens because Bill and I drove an ID21 at Bathurst in 64.
Mm.
And that went from 64 horsepower to 69 horsepower.
Oh, that was the hot rod version.
And did 104 mile an hour, but,
It gained 3 miles an hour.
And you sat back in this thing and just went as fast as it would go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful things. Who do you rate as the best driver that you've competed against or that you have mentored yourself? Because you've driven against a lot of guys.
I think perhaps Pete. I think so. Yeah.
He could drive anything, couldn't he?
Yeah. I was at Orange in might have been the Touring Car Championship, 59 or 60 it was. I was at Orange, and somebody said, "Oh, I'd like you to meet." And there was this young bloke, I think he was 19 or something, in a big pair of white overalls that were too big for him. And it was Pete Gagan, and he was racing a Standard 8 supercharged Standard 8.
That's almost a contradiction in terms.
a supercharged Standard 8, and guess what? On the back corner leading into the straight, he broke the front wheel. You can imagine this Standard 8 doing what it wasn't supposed to do.
Oh yes. They weren't designed for that sort of excessive horsepower. No, definitely not. Definitely not. Okay, one last question. Of all the circuits that you've driven at, which is your favourite? Given the fact that you were primarily a New South Wales driver for the majority of your career, would you rate Warwick Farm as the best, Catalina Park?
Oh, Warwick Farm, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than Bathurst? Or just different from Bathurst?
Well, see, Bathurst is a power circuit.
Yeah.
And you had to have a powerful car, all those long straights.
Yeah.
But Warwick Farm, was a real test. And it suited the cars that I raced. Yeah, so Warwick Farm for sure.
Yeah.
But I do understand, the guys that came from overseas that I was associated with really rated it highly. Fitzpatrick and Bell, they thought it was fantastic.
Oh, well, they were, we're talking about what a lot of other people, myself, call the good old days. That was when it was sport, not industry. And a lot of guys drove their race cars to the circuit, put the numbers on the side, went racing, and then hopefully drove home afterwards.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, I can remember quite often driving the race car to the circuit and putting the numbers on.
Yeah, yeah.
Going down to the scrutineering at Bathurst, they had a shed there with a dirt floor. Seriously.
Yes. Oh, I know, you're right. Gurdon Motors.
And then Gurdon Motors and, oh dear. Oh, there's lots of stories. You could be here for a week.
Well, we might do that one other time. Brian, look, I always enjoy these conversations with gentlemen of your era. You're such a star. You're a very articulate, very, very knowledgeable. Your memory is as sharp as it can be, and you're one of the rare people who is actually older than I am. So consequently, that's a compliment, I can promise you. But I've thoroughly enjoyed today. I hope you have too, because I think our audience
to suddenly be reminded of certain things that had happened to that famous saying back in the day, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a wonderful experience. And Brian Foley, thank you very much for coming in today. And I know that our audience will thoroughly enjoy the conversation. This is Ray Berghouse signing off.
Thank you, Ray.
Well, friends, that's the conclusion of another episode of the Australian Muscle Car Magazine podcast series. We hope you enjoyed the tales contained herein and look forward to seeing you again soon. In the meantime, be sure to check out musclecarmag.com.au for news stories, news and galleries from the Muscle Car Vault. We add them weekly, as well as brand new digital issues as soon as they become available on the newsstand. Thanks for listening, and as always, safe driving and happy reading from the team at Australian Muscle Car Magazine.